and welcome to another video. Now this is everything that I got for the last half of November. There's quite a bit more than I expected here. Mostly pre-order stuff. Actually, I think it's entirely pre-order stuff. And so yeah, I'm just going to get straight into it and I hope you guys enjoy. First of all is an anime. It's the only anime I got for this part of the month, and that is Ranma 1/2, the OVA and Movies collection. This is the final release in Viz's Ranma releases, obviously, and contains, I think, all 11 OVA and movies on several Blu-ray discs. Ranma is a show that I hadn't seen before, but I picked up sort of in curiosity. I've seen probably the first 100 episodes. This is one that you can't really sit down and binge watch because it is very episodic. But it's a very funny show. I'm glad to finally own all of it. And yeah, I'm just glad that Viz finally put this set out because I know a lot of people were wanting and waiting for the OVAs and movies. So now with this, Ranma is completely released on Blu-ray as well as its recent or simultaneous DVD release, and available for everyone pretty much. So yeah, glad to have gotten this one in. Next is actually something I showed off on my Twitter. And I'm not going to show you the whole thing because it's too big and too heavy, but it is Akira, the 35th anniversary collector's edition. This is the first time the series has been released in its unflipped format in these oversized books. The box set also contains Akira Club, which is an art book by Otomo, as well as a badge of the good for health, bad for education pill logo thing. Yeah, classic series, very highly regarded, and I think an obvious choice for Kodansha to re-release in these new improved editions. It's definitely one to pick up if you're a fan of the series. It's definitely one to pick up if you're a collector and want sort of the best version of a series. Even if you haven't seen it, it is definitely worth the read. Even if you don't necessarily like the film, it's definitely worth the read. It's a great series, and I'm just very glad that we are getting sort of improved re-releases of some older titles. Because the manga publishing community has not always been the best at preserving manga in its, you know, I don't want to say purest form, but in the same way that Japan presents it. But our standards and sort of publishing practices have changed so much from the early days that certain titles, especially ones with such pop culture impact like Akira, definitely deserve a relook and a re-release, and Kodansha did a wonderful job on this one. I know a lot of people received sort of dinged up boxes from Amazon. Luckily I didn't. I have a slightly crushed corner, not that you could ever tell, and considering it came all the way from the UK, I'm very pleased about that. And yeah, I honestly thought I'd end up with one of the beat up ones, but Kodansha is also doing a box replacement program, so if you have a problem with yours, you can always email us and get a new one, and so you don't have to be stuck with rips or major dings or anything like that, which is, again, good on their behalf. So great series, wonderful release. Definitely pick it up if you're a fan of classic manga, if you're a fan of sort of collector edition manga, or if you're just a fan of good manga in general. Next is the newest volume of Requiem of the Rose King, Ayakano's tragic, historic, sort of political manga. It's wonderful. Every episode, every volume ends with such a cliffhanger that you want to read the next one immediately. And it's so hard because there is quite a few months difference between these releases. So it's always a painful waiting for the next volume, but whenever it comes, you're really eager and excited to read it. As always, Ayakana has done a wonderful job with it, and I can never... The next volume can never get to me fast enough. It's honestly a fantastic series, one of my favorites coming out, especially from Viz, and yeah, just, it does everything right, in my opinion. It has everything I enjoy in manga, and yeah, it's just wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful series. Next is a Yen Press manga, and it's the most recent release of Delicious in Dungeon, Volume 3 by Ryoko Kui. Now, this manga, comedic fantasy, story, food manga. So if you're a fan of something like What Did You Eat Yesterday, pretty much any of Yoshinaga's series, this is definitely one you will probably enjoy. It has the fantasy element to it, or the sort of RPG element to it, but it's done so well and so earnestly that you can't not enjoy it. This series has made me laugh out loud several times within a single volume. It's just really, really well intentioned. There's no mean-spirited humor about it. It's just really fun, funny, and as the fantasy setting really is utilized, it's not just an excuse to have like magic or elves or whatever. They actually use the setting to the most of its ability and incorporates it pretty seamlessly into the premise. It's done so well. If you are a fan of food manga, proper food manga, ones that like actually give you a breakdown of recipes and how things are made, and not so much things like Food Wars, this is one you will definitely enjoy. If you're a fan of, you know, RPGs, things like Dungeons and Dragons, or, you know, online games, not online, like video games, that's the word. Can you tell I'm a gamer? No. Then you will probably enjoy this as well. It's the setting done really, really well, without just being a gimmick. And it's so funny. Everything about it is just humorous. And I can never wait for the next volume, because it's just so good you want to read the next volume. Although it's not like incredibly plot heavy. They do have a goal in mind, but it's not super driven to that. It is very sort of slow, leisurely paced. And because of that, it's able to actually explore the setting in ways that it wouldn't otherwise, which of course lends itself to the recipe food manga type of series that it is much better than it would if it was super battle and plot focused. But yes, great series. One that I wasn't really on my radar before the first or second volume came out, but I'd heard really good things about it from a lot of people whose manga tastes really line up with mine, and I gave it a shot, and I'm so glad that I did. It's wonderful. Really, really solid series. Next is Volume 8 of Welcome to the Ballroom by Tomo Takeuchi. Yeah, like with all of these volumes, not much to say in terms of, like, my opinions have changed on it. This volume I haven't actually read yet. I only got it a couple of days ago and I've been busy. But the series overall has definitely captured I think, what a sports manga should be without relying too heavily on a lot of what people would expect of more typical shonen sports series. I don't know. I've said it before, I think Takeuchi has a wonderful understanding of why Ballroom should be regarded as a sport and how it is so closely paralleled to a lot of more typical sports, and how, you know, people who, even though there's a huge athleticism to it, the stigma behind it as well, it's handled all very, very well. You can definitely tell she has experts helping her with, you know, actual terminology and that sort of thing. It's really good. I don't know anything about the anime. I haven't seen any of it, but the manga itself is wonderful. It's, you know, it's just great. Since the first volume, I've been saying that, and it's very reminiscent of my own experiences within ballroom and dance culture. So, if you are a dancer, you'll probably appreciate that. But even if you're not, it definitely gives you an insight as to the realities of competitive dance, as well as sort of why people would, I guess, want to dance, and how the culture behind it sort of overall. It's, again, I'm just repeating myself like I do every time there's a new volume of this out. It's very, very good. I'm actually hoping to read this volume very soon, so yeah. But good series. I think there's 10 or 11 volumes out in Japan, so we're pretty close release-wise. Still a couple volumes behind, but this is I think a monthly series, so if we catch up too quickly, then we'll be on a much longer wait schedule, which is never any fun. So yes. Welcome to the Ballroom, Volume 8. Always a good series to receive. And speaking of Fumi Yoshinaga, I have the next volume of Oku, Volume 13, the most recent of these releases. The cover on this one is gorgeous. I love these characters. This was a fantastic book. I think we get these volumes once a year. I think it's gotten down to once a year, and man, it's so good. It's just wonderful. If you are a fan of political manga, historic manga, with a little bit of a twist, you will enjoy this one. It's so wonderful. Yoshinaga is, and again, I've said it before, Yoshinaga is retelling history. So the actual events, I guess, for Japanese people would not be a surprise because it is literally history. For a Western audience, it's probably less likely that you have a in-depth understanding of politics during Edo period Japan. But in saying that, the gimmick of more women than men and being a matriarchal society and women having to run court and government and business is enough that it gives an edge to events that may, for the audience, be familiar. It's handled so well, and with this volume we really start to see this shift back to what we know as the reality of history of Commander Perry and sort of the Japanese slowly being introduced further into Western society, and how the government and Japan sort of handled that, and all the unease within the common folk, and as well as the courts, and all of those things. It's really good. This volume was really, really good. I'm not sure how much longer this series will run, considering we're sort of running out of history to cover with the series. But it's just been a fantastic, fantastic run by Yoshinaga. She really does have her craft down to just perfection. She knows exactly what she's doing and how she's doing it. For this particular volume, the pair on the cover are just wonderful power couple, basically. They're not a romantic couple, but just how they are able to influence the people around them to changes that they might not be willing to accept is really wonderful. It really shows the shift of mindset that was happening at the time. And yeah, it's great. Everything is great. I love their friendship. It's just it's such a good volume. I can't emphasize that enough. If you're not reading this, give it a try. It's a little intimidating at first because it is very heavy on the Japanese history and sort of the overall setting. Even the language in it is written in a very old-fashioned way, but it's so rewarding, and by this point it's honestly a marvel of manga, and you don't get series like this all that often outside of this sort of manga. So it's really very, very good. If you're a Yoshinaga fan, you should be buying it. Even if you're not a Yoshinaga fan, but if you're a history fan, you should be buying it. Yeah, it's great. Check it out. Check it out from your library, or, you know, check out the first couple volumes. It's really good. Then we have Kodansha's companion release to Neo Parasite F, Neo Parasite M. Contrary to the popular belief that M means male, comparatively to the F being female, Neo Parasite M did actually come out first, and in Japan was just called Neo Parasite. The M doesn't reflect the authors in the book, because there are at least 3 women who contributed works to this book. I think it's more so just shonen seinen side, whereas Neo Parasite F was just shoujo, which the F is much more reflective because shoujo mangaka tend to be women. But anyway, as for this particular volume, I mostly bought it for Moto Hagio and Riichi Ueshiba's works, and I was not disappointed. Morai Ota and Hiroki Endo, their pieces were also very good. I think out of the 12, there was a solid 6 or 7 I really enjoyed. Some of them were not ones that I would ever reread, but the strength of the stories I do like meant that it sort of made sense for me to pick it up. Mostly I did pick it up for Hagio and Ueshiba, and they did not disappoint. Hagio's story is actually the first one in this book, and it's amazing. It's exactly what you expect quality-wise from her, and it's just overwhelmingly wonderful. I think it has a level of quality and sort of an element of surprise that you don't necessarily expect going into it. And yeah, again, Hagio has been doing this for so many years now. She knows pretty much exactly what she's doing, and I think hers, as well as a couple others, really fits into the overall mood and theme of Parasite the best. Whereas Riichi Ueshiba, if I can find his, is just classic Ueshiba. It's really, really wonderful. I love sort of his character and how he actually makes the setting his own. I find the serious pieces a lot more engaging than the comedic ones. But with it being a compilation, I'm sure there's something for everyone. If you're not a fan of Parasite, I wouldn't necessarily say to pick it up, because there's really no reason for you to. You might still understand it if you've seen the show or that. But I think overall it's a middling book, because half of the stories are not ones that I'd read again, and half of them I would probably read again. But for me, again, personally, I think just on Hagyo's alone makes this a series or a book that I would buy and keep, because her work is just wonderful. The other ones that I enjoyed were sort of just a bonus, and the other ones that I didn't enjoy are just like, oh, well, they're there. And I'm sure plenty of other people enjoy those, but not really my thing. Yeah, overall, it's a bit of a mix. Like the other Neo Parasite F book was a bit of a mix, but I think the strength of the stories I enjoyed outweigh the weaknesses of the ones that I didn't enjoy. So yeah, it's a good book if you're a fan of Parasite, and if you're buying it anyway, there's definitely something you will probably enjoy in it. Like I said, there's something for everyone, and it's an interesting choice of authors, an interesting mix and compilation. So yeah, if nothing else, it's pretty interesting just with the variety of mangaka actually in this book. So yeah. Next is a debut volume from Viz, and that is Children of the Whales by Abi Umeda, which is not a series I knew much about aside from sort of being on this weird fantasy-esque but sort of dystopic setting of a society that lives on a island or floating structure they call the Mud Whale, and they're surrounded by a sea of sand. They don't have any knowledge of sort of other societies, other people in the world, but the people on the actual boat or in their community, there are marked and unmarked, and marked people can, I think, utilize like emotional power to actual like powers that can control and do things. But because of that, they have very short lifespans. They only live to about 30, whereas unmarked don't have that ability of emotional power manipulation, I guess. So they live to be much older and have become sort of the leaders of an old council of the community. Our main character, 14-year-old boy, he's the archivist, and so he documents everything that goes on the Mud Whale society in general. Amongst the marked, sort of encourage emotional suppression, because if their emotions get out of hand, then their powers get out of hand, and all those sorts of things. Reading the back of the book, the author notes, was pretty interesting in how she got the idea and why she used that particular setting. The Sea of Sand reminds me a lot of Kieli, which is a light novel series. If you haven't checked it out, it's a pretty good series. It's one of the first that Yen Press ever released. It's only 9 volumes. It's really good. But the setting itself, of like a isolated community and sort of weird emotional powers, it's reminiscent of a lot of things. Kelly for one, but also it reminded me a lot of, what's that show? From the New World, which is a lot darker than this series is, I think. Like I said, I don't know very much of Children of the Whales. But that's a fantastic show if you haven't seen it. It reminds me of a lot of different things, and that's a good thing. It does it very, very well. A little bit of Last Exile as well. It's got certain elements to it that you see in a lot of other series, but it marries them together in a very interesting way. And I'm actually quite interested to get the next volume because there's so much going on and there's so much potential. We really end on a quite serious cliffhanger of this volume, so I'm curious to see which direction they keep going with. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'd recommend it. Especially this first volume. It's a very strong debut for a series. I don't know how long it is in Japan. I know there's like 3 or 4 or 5 volumes out. So it's a relatively newish series in Japan as well. But yeah, it's really good. The art is also very nice inside. Yeah, it's a pretty great series, and I'm looking forward to reading more. It's, again, not one I knew much about, and I'm not one to pick up series on the cover, but the premise sounded very interesting. The cover is beautiful, and I wanted to see what Umeda really did with the characters, and I wasn't disappointed. It was very, very, very good. For manga, we have another debut, this one from Yen Press, and one that I've been highly anticipating ever since its license, ever since before its license. One that I really, really wanted, and thanks to the recent anime, we have gotten a release now, and that is Aka 13 Territory Inspection Department by Natsume Ono. So, no surprise that I'm a big Ono fan. I find her stories very interesting. She's got a very unique and clear style. It's this particular series, I haven't read the manga, obviously, but I have seen the show. And the show was probably one of my favorite shows from the beginning of the year. Certainly of its season, although I have a terrible memory when it comes to that sort of thing. The show was one of my favorites that was being released at that time. In fact, that sort of reflects itself in that I bought the Japanese Blu-ray releases rather than waiting for the English American release because I liked all the extras. It was a beautiful box and it had English subtitles. It's just a really good show. It's not groundbreaking. It's not the most amazing thing you'll ever watch, but it's really solid. It's really, again, genuine. And although it's not some huge grand plot or anything like that, it has a lot of intrigue to it. It's very leisurely at the beginning of it, and that leisureliness sort of stays throughout the series because it is very reflective of our main character, Jean here. Jean. It follows him. He's sort of a head inspector amongst Aka, and it has been put in charge of going to all 13 districts, just seeing how the Aka departments there are going, and sort of figuring out how the people, the general populace, feel amongst the 13 different areas, because each area really is its own sort of self-contained bubble. They have completely different cultures and people and things like that. But yeah, it's very interesting. There's a subplot, or really the main plot is about sort of a revolt and the dissent amongst the common folk against the royals and having this broken up structure, and why should certain districts have to provide certain exports to the others when they don't have the same sort of monetary gain from it, that, etc., etc., and how some places don't have the resources available, so they aren't treated to the same level. Typical political issues and sort of discussions, which sounds pretty boring, but Aka does it in an interesting way. And I find that all of the two mainish characters, really Jean and his best friend Nico, are very interesting characters. I think they strengthen the story, because if you didn't have such likable characters, then you might not be as interested. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of mystery to the first half of the series, or the first 2/3 of the series, and later revelations make this a stronger series than it starts as. Although it's a good series at the beginning, but I think the later part of it solidifies it as a whole. Yeah. Again, I haven't read this particular volume, but from what I know of Ono's work, what I know of this series, it's very, very good. Like with all of her stuff, she has a very particular style, especially facial style. And that's something you either enjoy or not. I really do like her work quite a bit. I love her coloring for the color pages. I find this particular volume really has... It's made her art style a little bit more conventional. I think it's a little bit more approachable for a casual manga fan, so maybe that will help the series. I don't know. But it's not, like, it's still clearly an Ono work, especially insofar as the food and the characters. It's just really good. Yeah, if you're an Ono fan, you're probably picking it up. It's only going to be 6 volumes long. It's already finished in Japan. Like all of... as I find with Ono's longer works, I think having more time to tell a story and grow the characters benefits her a lot. Which is why, in my opinion, Aka and House of Five Leaves are stronger stories than some of her 1-volume things. So, yeah. Very, very good volume. Very exciting volume. And I'm glad we've gotten another Ono manga coming out in English. It's really exciting for me. I have light novels. The first being, not obviously, but both from Yen Press. The first being Your Name, another side, Earthbound. So this is the complementary volume to the singular Your Name light novel. This is sort of taken from multiple perspectives, from Mitsuha's friends and family and their reactions to her in the early parts of Your Name, when Taki is actually inside of Mitsuha. He's the one who is that they're experiencing, but they don't know that because obviously it looks like Mitsuha, which is something you don't get from the actual film or the original light novel. So it's a good perspective to see sort of the things that were going on the other end of the switch, because in the film we do see most things from Mitsuha's perspective, and we see a lot of her experiences in Tokyo as Taki, or we don't really see any of Taki's experiences as Mitsuha in the country, and as a shrine maiden, and as all these things, aside from little snippets that Mitsuha finds out after the fact from her friends or from the people around her. So yeah, if you're a fan of the film or the other light novel, I would say pick this one up. I think it's good because we do really have 2 main characters, but for certain parts of the film, you only see perspective from one or the other. And I think the earlier body switching part is very humorous, and there's a lot of fun to be had, and the fact that we only see things from Misuha's perspective as Taki sort of is a letdown, so the fact that we can see a bit more of the body switch shenanigans in this book is a definite plus. Yeah, nothing really more else to say about it than that, but really fun book. I really enjoyed both the film and the novels. Yeah, it's just great. A solid work. Finally, for light novels, we have the most recent Durarara by Ryogo Narita. Again, a lot of people are more familiar with Durarara than Bakuno, I find. It's still more of the same. If you enjoy having multiple character perspectives and sort of very complicated and convoluted plots that might take a couple volumes for it to fully resolve itself, then, I mean, you're already probably a fan of Durarara. Narita has a very distinct sort of character base and story base that he draws from, which I do enjoy. I've said before, Durarara is a solid series, and there are plenty of characters to like and explore in this series, both good and bad. Personally, I find Bakuno an overall stronger series with stronger characters and more interesting characters, but I think that's helped by the setting. I find 1930s, you know, Prohibition era New York far more interesting and entertaining than just like modern day Tokyo. But in saying that, having been to Ikebukuro, it is a pretty crazy city. You could see some of this stuff happening. So to that extent, it does lend itself to believability and thus enjoyment. Yeah, it's a fun series. It's not, you know, reinventing the wheel, but it's always fun to have a new volume of this out, and light novels are not particularly long. This one is one of the thinner volumes of this series. There's 13 volumes in all, so we're over halfway now. Only 5 more to go, and then we'll be done. Whereas with Bakuno, Japan's already in the 20s with no real sign of stopping. Well, actually, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, Durarara, good series. Both anime and light novel. I couldn't give an opinion on the manga because I don't know. But yeah, solid read. That's everything that I got for this month, or last half of November. Yeah, quite a bit of manga, some light novels that I was looking forward to, and an anime release that I was super looking forward to, even though it's going to be a while till I actually get to it. But yeah, solid month of releases, and I know that December has some pretty interesting stuff, so hopefully you guys will come back and watch that video. I hope you guys did enjoy this though. As always, I really appreciate any comments that you can give, maybe ways I can improve, as always. And I'd like to hear what you got, or your opinions on certain titles, whether you agree with me, completely disagree with me, certain series that you've been looking forward to, or things that you enjoy that I might not have heard of. Yeah, all of that. I'm really interested, and I love reading super long comments, especially. I do try to respond to most of them. I've been a bit slack recently though, so apologies about that. I do also have a Twitter if you're not following me. The link is in the description. I pretty much just post about manga on there. Manga and my opinions, so whether or not you want to hear those is up to you. But again, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.